Daughter of the Deep, Chapter 1, Breath. Written and recorded by CarolineAnn. Holding my breath, I could feel the last bubbles of air brushing past my cheeks as they rose up from the depths I was sinking into, endlessly. Up above, where my eyes searched for the escaping moonlight, the water seemed to reflect the midnight blue and sparkle of a sapphire, but the moonlight was leaving me now, and the color above became too faint to see as anything but faded black, with lines of streaming silver flashing in the darkness. The black below me held more fear than the shroud that was forming above. I was caught and struggling against the rush of pressure that made my lungs, empty of air, feel that they could just collapse and implode. I wanted to breathe, wanted to force myself to the surface. I felt a tingle in my fingers and my lips as my eyes started to haze over and lose focus of the space around me. The floating particles of old fish scales that lit up in the scarce light, moving from view and blurring into a million sparkling lights as I felt my body judder uncontrollably. I breathed in as my body forced me to, and felt the burn as salty water filled my lungs and nose. But as I sunk, I had thought I'd be out by now. Sinking further into the pool of eternal darkness, I could only think how stupid I had been, and how very strange it was that I was still conscious of the water world I had fallen into. My lungs were sore, but hadn't given up, as if they were trying to recycle the water that splashed within them violently and made me want to cough so badly. Cough up seaweed and blood and scales and barnacles. That's what it felt like was down there. And then the burning stopped. Why was I still drifting towards the bottom, weightless now? There was no pressure filling my skull, a migraine that could kill anyone else who'd ever tried to get to this depth. In the blackness that held no light for a moment, I thought it was done. I was dead. Gone. I'd been sunk, literally. I wondered whether this was my in-between, whether heaven and hell really did exist, and I was just waiting to see which I'd been sent to. Of course, I'd never considered God before in my life, and an afterlife doesn't seem much to the point. Not as long as I live up this life enough. Not that I'd ever get the chance now. Then the light show started. I could see a display of pyrotechnics that moved and swayed and span. Some of it looked like it was liquid too, although some of the neon looked like it was a part of something. I began to feel very scared. I wanted to curl up into a ball and conceal myself from the deadly waters. It was too late now, though. There was no chance of escape. I was in the depths of an ocean with about 1,000,000 fish that wanted dinner. If I didn't drown soon, I realized I'd be eaten. I took another breath, and it felt foreign. I hadn't noticed that for all this time I'd been holding my breath. In fact, I hadn't noticed that I hadn't felt a difference in not breathing than I would in breathing. But when I did take water down into my lungs, it was cold and shocked me. But it felt like I was drinking normally, as if my lungs were bypassed completely. I could feel the oxygen in my body being renewed. This was insane. I felt something brush my arm in the darkness and squirmed. I was still sinking, ropes tangled around my feet and ankles and a weight hanging from it heavily, taking me down, 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 further into the murky black. Before I could travel much further below the water, I felt something tingling from my toes, right up my legs and into my hips, and just across my ribcage I felt something rather odd, relieving, but odd. Light travelled up from below me, and I wondered what could be so bright in the depths. The light turned white, and I realized it was me. My legs had started to glow so brightly that I couldn't look at them without hurting my eyes. And when I looked back, I didn't have legs anymore, but one very long, scaly, shiny fin. I couldn't tell what color it was, just that I swallowed too much water and was crazy for seeing it, but the long fin appearing had meant my ropes had been shed, and I could swim back for the surface and for air. I swam up, up, up towards the sapphire rays of the moonlight, and burst out of the salty sea, taking my first swig of air in at least 15 minutes, but the air stung my lungs. I guessed it was the water damage, and held my hand over my throat. I tried to speak, but all that came from my lips was a melodic sound that I never heard before. I thought it couldn't be me. I was breathless and voiceless from the salty water, I told myself. I tried to scream in the middle of the sea. It was turning turbulent, tossing to and fro. It bowled me over several times, pulling me here and there as I frantically tried to ask for help. Lightning struck all around, fiery and white over the waters. I couldn't hear my voice as I shrieked, only the shrill, sharp sound of a wounded creature. It was loud and dolphin-like, but as long as a whale's call. It made me cry to hear it in my panic, as the waves rushed past me and span me in circles. The ocean foam was forming around me from how I was struggling, and from the way that my tail, if I really had it, was thrashing at the waves. And as I cried, the sound became sallow and high, thinner and choked. I couldn't see the coast any more, or the ship, or anything, not even the distant twinkle of buoys. I was far adrift from where I should have been, and the cold electric air was stinging my skin. I wondered what would happen to me now, and what would become of my corpse. Would it wash up in the shore in the morning, or would a shark have a nibble instead? Everything was becoming hazy, as if someone had just turned out the lights on my mind. End chapter 1.